Okay, so it's just a quick video to show the process for removing the Enviolo wheel and refitting it if you need to, say, change out a puncture in the tyre or swap your tyre for a different one or something like that. So it's a pretty simple process, but it's a little bit more steps involved than a kind of standard wheel swap on a derailleur gear system. First thing you're going to do is disconnect the power cable for the Enviolo. Just tucked in here behind the chainstay, you can see the wire runs from here and then into the AHI unit there. So we pull that, it's just a press fit, and there's a little 4-pin plug on the inside there. So once that's disconnected, then we can actually drop the wheel out of the trike. First, make sure that your parking brake isn't on. It's easy to forget, and then you're like, why wait, the wheel come out? It's just held in place by the parking brake. You're only going to need a couple of tools to do this job. First is a 15mm spanner. We're going to use this primarily for undoing the wheel. And then also, ideally, we'd want to have a torque wrench which goes up to 40 Newton meters, which is the torque setting for these rear wheel nuts. That's very tight, much tighter than you would see on, say, a standard front wheel on a mountain bike or something like that. So, take a 15mm spanner, remove both of your wheel nuts, as you can see, very tight. And those are standard thread, lefty-loosey, righty-tighty nuts. These are one at a time, first one side then the other. So that's those two. We actually do have a giant extra large spanner, which we sometimes use just to make this job easier. You don't need this kind of full-size standard spanner will do the job. So once you've got the wheel nuts loosened and the cable removed and the parking brake not set to on, or if you've got a V-brake parking brake, the arms unclipped so that the wheel can drop out, you're going to push the chain tensioner here forward. As you can see, that puts slack into the chain, and that's going to allow you to remove the wheel. So it's kind of as one motion, push the chain tensioner forward and then lift the back end of the trike up, and that's going to drop the wheel out. Now you can see the wheel is kind of caught by the chain, so you can pull the chain through to pull you enough slack to remove it around the AHI there. Take the wheel out. I'm going to just lean it against my body, and then you can gently let the spring tension out of the tensioner, put the back end down. That tensioner will be fine, just gently set down on the ground. Don't have to worry about putting a block under it or anything like that. So there you go, you've got your wheel out of the trike, and now you can change the tube, swap the tyre, whatever it is you need to do on the wheel very easily. Okay, so once you've got all that done, you've pumped the tyre up, everything's ready to go again. You're going to grab your rear wheel, make sure that the wheel nuts are still in place, and these small tensioner washers are nicely pushed out against the wheel nuts, and then that will let the wheel drop into the gap there. So just almost the reverse of what we did before. We're going to take the back end, we're going to lift it up and find the right part of the chain for the wheel to go into. So it's quite easy to accidentally put the wheel inside this part or something like that. That's not right. You need to make sure that when you put the wheel in, it fits into this loop here of the chain. So the chain comes from the bottom, around the tensioner, and then around the wheel and back towards the front. So the wheel's going to go into here. So again, drop the wheel in between the back end, pull the tensioner forward to give you as much slack as possible, and then drop the chain over the top. Now, what can happen here quite easily, I'll pick you up and I'll show you as best I can, is the chain can drop between the sprocket and the hub. So that is something you need to be careful of in order to make sure the system actually works. So looking down from the top, push the tensioner forward again, and then adjust the chain so that it drops onto the sprocket and is kind of fully engaged with the teeth. Once you've done that, we're going to line up the disc rotor so that the wheel will drop into the frame and just Just make sure we're carefully lined up, not grabbing anything, catching, causing ourselves problems for later. I can't see why this one's not dropping in. Always the way when you get the camera out. There we go. So just a little bit of wiggling gets you into place. So we need to make sure that the wheel is fully seated, deep down in the dropouts, no play or anything like that. And then we're going to tighten up with our fingers, just fully tighten these nuts down as much as you can. And then grab our torque wrench, set to 40 Newton meters, and tighten up the wheel nuts until we hear that click. As you can see, that's very tight, much tighter than you'd see on a upright bike or anything like that. So that's why we suggest using the torque wrench. It's something that kind of most people won't be used to the feeling of. Once you've got the wheel fully seated in place, we're just going to pop the cable back onto the AHI unit, plug it in, fully seated, and then we're good to go. And that should all work. You may find that the system needs to run a calibration in the app in order to work properly when you've taken it out and put it back in. Usually that won't happen, but occasionally it does. So if it does happen, don't worry too much. Just run the calibration, pedal through the system, and it'll take you through the steps. And that should be all you need to do. Thanks very much.